2 spoons. That is all it takes. 2 level spoons of a white powder that costs $2.19 at any hardware store. And the pest that has been destroying your garden for years will not come back. Not this season. Not next season. Maybe not ever. I know how that sounds. I know you have heard promises like that before. Usually printed on the side of a $40 bottle with a skull on the label. This is different, because what I am about to show you was not invented in a laboratory. It was not patented, packaged, or put on a shelf with a markup. It was written down in a government bulletin in 1914, practiced quietly on plain farms across Ohio and Pennsylvania for over a century. And then, buried so completely that most county extension agents today will look at you like you are speaking a foreign language if you bring it up. The pest control industry in this country is worth $22 billion a year. You are a big part of that number. And the one thing that threatens that number more than anything else is a gardener who knows that 2 spoons of something already sitting under the sink will do what a $40 bottle promises and never quite delivers. Stay with me until the end, because the last thing I am going to show you is the specific 2-spoon application that the old-timers use directly in the soil. Not around it, not on top of it, in it. And what it does to the pest population living underground is something I did not fully believe until my 3rd season running this method, when I pulled up a plant that should have been dead and found the roots clean. I will show you exactly what I did and exactly how to do it yourself. But that comes last. Stay with me. Before we get into it, tell me in the comments right now what pest is winning in your garden this year. Squash vine borers, Japanese beetles, cabbage worms, cutworms. Tell me what state you are in and what is eating you alive out there. I read every one of them. Sometimes your comment becomes the next video. I want to tell you something about my grandmother before we start. She kept a kitchen garden behind the house from the time she was a young woman until she was well into her 80s. 1/3 of an acre, beans, tomatoes, squash, sweet corn along the back fence. She grew in a county where the summers were hot and the insects were worse. And she never once, not in 60 years of gardening, walked into a store and bought a bottle of pest spray. Not once. When something was eating her plants, she went to the shelf above the washing basin in the mudroom, and she came back with a small white cardboard box, and she fixed it. I did not understand what was in that box until I was old enough to follow her outside and ask. When I asked, she looked at me like the answer was obvious. She said, "It is just the washing powder. It fixes everything." That powder was borax, and it took me another 20 years of gardening on my own land to understand how completely right she was. Let us start with the one that stops most gardeners cold before July even arrives: the cutworm. If you have ever gone out to your garden in the morning and found a healthy seedling lying flat on the ground, stem cut clean at the soil line like something took a pair of scissors to it in the night, you know exactly what I am talking about. The cutworm lives in the top 2 inches of your soil. It feeds at night and hides during the day, curled up like a question mark down in the dark. By the time you see the damage, it has already been working your beds for a week. The garden centers will sell you grub killer granules for $18 a bag. You scatter them, you water them in, you wait, and the cutworms move 6 inches sideways and keep cutting. Here is what actually works. Mix 2 level tablespoons of borax into 1 gallon of warm water. Stir it until it dissolves completely, clear as tap water. Then pour it slow and even directly around the base of each seedling in a ring about 4 inches out from the stem. Not on the stem, around it. Do it in the evening after watering, so the solution carries down into that top inch of soil where the cutworms are resting. The borax does not kill on contact. That is not how it works. And that is exactly why it works better than what you can buy. The cutworm moves through treated soil, absorbs the boron through its soft underside, and within 48 hours it has a digestive failure it cannot recover from. The seedling is untouched, because at that dilution, in that ring, the concentration is below the threshold that affects plant roots. This is the measurement that matters. This is why my grandmother kept a proper measuring spoon next to that box and never eyeballed it. Level, not heaping. Level. One application holds for about 3 weeks in dry weather. After a heavy rain, do it again. That is your cutworm season handled for under $1 in materials. But cutworms stay underground. What about the ones that come in from the air? The Japanese beetle arrived in this country in 1916 in a shipment of iris bulbs from Japan, and it has been eating American gardens ever since. Roses, grapes, basil, raspberries, green beans, corn silk. It is not picky, and the damage it does is not subtle. Skeletonized leaves, stripped flower buds, a cane full of fruit reduced to bare stems in 3 days, by a cluster of metallic green beetles feeding in full sun like they own the place. Because in most American gardens, they do. The traps the garden centers sell you actually make this problem worse. Research out of the University of Kentucky showed that Japanese beetle traps attract more beetles to your yard than they catch. You put up a trap, and you have issued an invitation to the whole neighborhood. The bag fills up, and you feel like you are winning. The roses tell a different story. What the old-timers did was work the soil in late summer, which is when the beetle lays her eggs in the turf around the garden. The grubs that hatch from those eggs are next year's beetle population. They are sleeping 2 inches down in your lawn and your garden borders right now, and nobody from the garden centre is going to tell you that. 2 tablespoons of borax dissolved in a gallon of water, poured slow across the soil perimeter of the garden in late August. Not inside the beds, around them, along the grass edge where the eggs go in. The grubs that contact the treated soil do not make it to spring. 1 treatment, late summer, pennies. You are not killing the adult you can see. You are eliminating next year's army before it ever hatches. For the adults already flying this season, pick them in the early morning when the air is still cool and they are slow and stupid with the cold. Drop them into a jar of soapy water. I know that sounds like something your great aunt told you. It is. It also works better than anything else that does not kill the bees alongside the beetles. My grandmother never reached for a spray on a flowering plant. Not because she read a study about it, because she kept chickens and bees. And she understood that you do not burn the barn to get rid of the rats. Let us talk about the one that breaks the heart of every squash grower, every single summer without fail. The squash vine borer. The moth lays her eggs at the base of the stem in late June. Small reddish-brown eggs pressed flat against the vine like tiny coins. The egg hatches. The larva bores straight into the stem and eats it from the inside out. By the time you see the wilting, by the time you see that telltale wet sawdust weeping from the outside of the stem, the larva is already an inch deep inside your plant. Commercial sprays applied to the outside of the stem cannot reach it. You can slit the stem with a pocket knife, pull the borer out by hand, mound soil over the wound, and pray the vine reroots. Some gardeners do this every year. I did this for 3 seasons running on my own property, before a neighbour, a woman named Ruth, who had been growing squash on the same half-acre plot for 31 years without losing a single vine to borers, watched me operating on my zucchini one July afternoon and shook her head. She told me I was fixing the wrong end of the problem. She said, "You treat the soil before the plant goes in. Not after. Before." Here is what she showed me. 4 weeks before your last frost-free date, before a single squash transplant goes into the ground, water the bed thoroughly and apply your borax solution. 2 tablespoons per gallon. Spread it across the entire bed and work it lightly into the top inch with a garden rake. Then let the bed rest for 10 days before planting. This does 2 things. It corrects the boron level in that soil, which squash and cucumbers genuinely need as a micronutrient for healthy stem development. And it creates a soil environment that the overwintering pupae of the squash vine borer moth find hostile enough to avoid. I cannot give you the precise chemistry behind that second part. What I can give you is this. The season after Ruth showed me that method, I had 0 borers on 8 zucchini plants and 12 butternut vines. My neighbour across the road, same county, same weather, same year, lost every squash plant he owned before the end of August. Pre-treat the soil before the plant goes in. That is the part nobody in the catalogue business will ever tell you, because you cannot sell that in a bottle. Now let us move to the pest that does not touch your plants at all, but will hollow out your harvest before winter even arrives. And yes, this belongs in this conversation, because it comes in on the produce you carry through the back door, on the garlic braids hanging in the mudroom, on the dried beans in the mason jars on the cellar shelf, pantry moths, Indian meal moths, the small, dusty brown moth you start seeing near the ceiling in the kitchen sometime in late August. By the time you spot the adult, the larvae have already cycled through 3 generations inside your stored food. Inside your cornmeal, your flour, your dried herbs, your seed packets you are saving for next spring. The eggs are invisible to the eye. The larvae are the size of an eyelash. The damage, by the time you find it, is total. My grandmother dusted a thin line of borax along the back edge of every pantry shelf at the end of August and again at the start of April. Not near the food, behind it, along the wall edge where the shelf meets the baseboard. She did it the same way she did everything, quietly, without drama, with a spoon she kept in the box for that purpose. The moths did not lay in areas where borax dust was present. The larvae that hatched and tried to travel from one jar to another across that treated shelf did not make it across. She never lost a pantry to moths in 60 years of keeping one. I asked her once how she knew to do it. She said her mother taught her, and her mother's mother before that. And she looked at me like she was waiting for me to ask something harder. 2 tablespoons. The number keeps appearing across every one of these applications, and it is not a coincidence. That is the concentration at which borax in water reaches the threshold that disrupts the biology of pest insects, without reaching the level that harms your soil biology or your plant roots. The old USDA bulletins from the 1930s use this measurement consistently across dozens of documented field applications. Those were not guesses. They were the result of decades of trial work on actual farms, by actual county agents who were paid to figure out what worked when the farmer could not afford for anything not to. Now, I want to tell you about the application I have been holding back since the beginning of this video. It is called a soil drench, and it is the one that surprised me more than anything else I have tested in 10 seasons of working this method. It is used for fungus gnats, wireworms, root aphids, and any soft-bodied pest that spends part of its life cycle underground, feeding on your roots without ever showing itself above the surface. Root aphids in particular are almost impossible to catch until the damage is already done. Yellowing leaves, stunted growth, a plant that looks almost healthy but simply stops performing, stops setting fruit, stops pushing new growth, and you cannot figure out why. Pull it up and look at the root mass. And if you know what you are looking for, you will see them. Tiny, pale, clustered along the roots like moving dust. I found my first root aphid infestation on a container tomato in my 4th season. The plant was 3 feet tall, had set 6 trusses, and then just stopped. Leaves yellowing from the bottom. No pest visible anywhere above the soil. I nearly pulled it. I was standing there with my hand on the stem, when I remembered something an older grower had told me at a seed swap the previous winter. A man named Gerald, who had kept 3 acres of market vegetables outside of town for over 30 years without a single purchased chemical input. He told me that when a plant stops for no reason, you can see the reason is always below where you are looking. I unpotted the tomato. The roots were covered. Gerald had told me about the drench. 2 level tablespoons of borax dissolved completely in 1 gallon of warm water, with 1 tablespoon of plain unsulfured molasses stirred in. The molasses is not in the old bulletins. That part came from Gerald. He told me the molasses feeds the beneficial bacteria in the soil at the same moment the borax disrupts the pest population. You are not sterilizing the soil, he said. You are tilting it, making it a worse place for what does not belong, and a better place for what does. I mixed it that afternoon and poured it slow around the root zone of that tomato after I repotted it. Morning application. Let it carry down into the root zone without flushing it through. 2 weeks later, that plant had pushed 4 inches of new growth and was setting fruit on 3 new trusses. I have not lost a container plant to root aphids since. Pour the drench in the early morning around the root zone of the affected plant. 1 gallon covers about 6 square feet. Do not drench the same spot more than twice in a single growing season. That is the limit the old-timers kept to, and the limit I keep to as well. The line between useful and damaging with borax is always the dose and always the frequency. Respect that line the way you respect a blade or a hot stove, with attention and consistency, and you will never have a problem. 2 tablespoons, 1 gallon, morning application, twice a season at most. That is the whole system. I want to be honest with you before I let you go, because I am not in the business of selling miracles. Borax will not solve everything in your garden. The striped cucumber beetle does not respond to it in any meaningful way. The deer coming in from the tree line at dusk does not care about it at all. Tomato hornworms are too large, too insulated by their own mass. For those problems, there are other old methods, and I will cover them in their own time. What borax handles is the soft-bodied pest, the larval stage pest, the pest that breeds in soil, and the pest that colonizes your stored harvest. That covers a significant part of what is eating your garden right now, and it handles them for pennies, with measurements that have not changed in 100 years, written down in documents your tax dollars paid to produce, printed for farmers who had no other option, and quietly shelved once someone figured out there was more money in a branded bottle. You did not lose this knowledge by accident. There is no profit in a $2 box that does what a $40 bottle promises. So the $40 bottle got the shelf space and the catalogue pages and the end cap at the garden centre. And the white cardboard box got moved to the laundry aisle and left there, patient as a field in February, while 2 generations of gardeners forgot it was there. My grandmother never forgot. She just kept the spoon in the box and the box on the shelf, and her garden clean for 60 years. You are getting it back now. One level spoon at a time. Tell me in the comments what you are going to try first, and what pest you are finally going to stop letting win. I read every one of them, and I answer what I can. If this is how you want to garden, subscribe, because next time I am going to show you what happens when you bury a single handful of wood ash 6 inches down in the soil before you plant your brassicas in spring. There is a pest that has destroyed every cabbage, every head of broccoli, every kale plant you have ever tried to grow from seed. One handful of ash 6 inches down in the fall. That pest does not find your spring crop. I will show you exactly how and exactly why it works. And I will tell you the name of the man who showed me, and where he farmed, and how many seasons he ran it without losing a single plant. The old knowledge is still here. It never went anywhere. It was just waiting for someone to stop buying the substitute. Long enough to remember where they put the real thing.